What about the control valves? When we talk about control valves, we need to consider the isolation of the valve in case it's out of service. We should also consider solutions to minimize process shutdown while the valve is out of service, because it's not logic to shut down the whole system or the whole plant just because one valve is out for maintenance. That's why we need to add an isolation valve upstream and downstream the control valve, and to take the valve out of service, we shall need to add a bleed valve to drain the trapped volume here between the manual valve and the control valve. The bleed valve can be either with orientation downwards in case of liquid service, or it can be upwards in case of gas service. Now we need to install bleed connection. Do we need to install one bleed on one side or two bleed valves on both sides? Well, this depends on the fail action of the control valve. If the valve fails in the open position, then one bleed valve would be enough, as all the way from the first to the second isolation valve is already open. However, if the valve fail action is closed, then we shall need two bleed valves. One upstream the valve, the control valve, and the other shall be downstream it. If we are considering double block and bleed in the system, then the configuration shall be this way. Now, in case of control valve maintenance, we still want the process to be running. We shouldn't shut down the whole process because a control valve is out of service. That's why we need to add a bypass valve. The bypass valve shall be a globe valve with a rated CV close to the CV of the control valve. So when the control valve is out of service, we can use the manual bypass valve with an opening that is compared to the last opening of the control valve until the valve is back to service. Sometimes we may be afraid that the globe valve on the bypass line passes the liquid to downstream the normal operation. In this case, we need to add an isolation valve upstream the bypass valve.